Devin Rucker with the Monroe County Sports Network. We're here with another episode of Coach's Corner. We're inside the LevelUp Training Complex, home of the LevelUp Studios. So whether you're looking for court or field rentals, or looking to call to inquire about personal training or our club sports, reach out to LevelUp Training Complex on either social media or check them out at their website. Now, for today's show, legendary coach Dave Bork. Here's Scott and Todd with more.
And we are back, folks. Another edition of Coach's Corner. We are together today, back again. Now, Todd, is this our first show or the second show? We don't know what to call it. We did a pilot.
I feel like it's our first. We did the run through with the pilot,
right?
And now here we are. And we got a lot of comments.
We did.
On that first show.
We did get some comments. Some about our appearance, some about our outfits. I think we got some clothes coming. I think some official.
Everything.
Coach's Corner clothes coming. Outfits. Yeah, love it. We are. So if it is our first, I can't think of a better guest to have as our first than my favorite coach, my uncle, your favorite coach, Hall of Famer Coach Bork in the house this morning. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, this is good stuff.
What an honor.
Oh, my God. And we're going to cover so much.
Lay off the coffee before you start this thing, man. You're pumped. I watched that episode. I was like, this guy's going to fly off the couch.
So we're just going to get right to it, Coach, right? So you've had some very gifted runners, right? Both of them sitting on this couch. Very gifted runners in your long Hall of Fame coaching career. And I've said this before, freshman year, you'd have to go back, right? Freshman year, I was the fastest male runner in that class, the class of 1987. I don't care what he says. He just wasn't.
He's not even responding to that.
He's not even responding to that.
No.
So what a pleasure it is to have, Todd Williams, right, co-host. We finally talked you into doing this, right? You committed now?
Anything to help Monroe, I'm doing it. So here I am every Tuesday.
He's in, and we've got Coach Bork, our first guest. So this is awesome. What a great show this is going to be. So positive stuff, man. That's what we talked about. This is going to be great. So Coach, first question, how did you get into coaching? What bit you early on and said, you know what, I want to get back to kids?
Well, I guess it goes back to when I was a fifth grader, I just somehow knew that I was going to be a teacher and a coach.
Wow.
I just loved sport, always did. Played midget league baseball, played Class F basketball, played sandlot football, and I had some great coaches along the way. And I just said, I want to make my career as a teacher and a coach. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And I made my mind up as a fifth grader. And
just had a birthday recently, right? A big birthday here, and here you're still giving back.
Well, like Todd, if I can help Monroe, if I can help any coach out there, my door's always open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked about that, right, on our pilot. That really, the whole idea of this show is to give back to Monroe County, to highlight current coaches, retired coaches, and just people that have had a great impact on our student athletes. And we start and end right here with Coach Bork, one of the greatest here of all time. Certainly, was very instrumental in Todd's career. So, good stuff. So, early influences. Some of the coaches that you had to say, you know what, I want to follow their pathway.
Yeah, some of the people who might not be extremely well known to Monroe. My first midget league coach in baseball was a guy named Paul Turner. Wonderful guy, about 5 years older than us kids.
Yeah.
Just a real good encourager of kids. And then I remember another one that was really very instrumental in what I did was Bob Morris, who was my ninth grade basketball coach, ninth grade football coach at Cantrick. Low-key guy, kind of reminds me of Tom Landry a little bit.
Yeah.
Knew his stuff real well, was always calm, cool, and collected, and just a really good guy. So I knew you didn't have to be Newt Rockney to be a good coach.
Yeah. And so those early influences, right? You've got coaches, you've had them, right? And you and I, we talk about your involvement here at Monroe and on to Tennessee and Olympics. But, as far as your running foundation, for you, it starts right here with Coach. What were your first memories of meeting Coach Bork?
I think I mentioned this on the pilot
/ episode 1. Yeah.
I was playing all the other sports, and then again the influencers, from Coach Randy Monday, Coach Rick Kleinsmith. They said we really think you should run. You've got some talent. You work really hard. So we're going to hand you off. We're going to hand the baton over to Coach Dave Bork at the high school. So my first interaction is Coach Bork really emphasizing how important goals were and how important hard work was. And that's the first thing that hit me. It's like, And he couldn't promise the results would happen, but he did say, if you work your butt off, you show up every day, you do the things that I'm going to tell you to do, you're going to have a really good chance to improve your time and do well in races. And I think that that was the seed that was planted in me early, from 10th grade in cross country with Coach Bork all the way through my, collegiate career at University of Tennessee and then professional career through the Olympics. So not really any rocket science to it. There wasn't anything magic to it. It was do what I'm telling you to do, because he's been there. That was another thing too. He had ran at Miami of Ohio. He ran with Olympians at Miami of Ohio. He was exposed to high level running. So I was just blessed to have him in my life, because he happened to be at Monroe High School, and I got a chance to run underneath him. And not only myself, but all the athletes he coached, he really left an impact in their life.
What would you guess? I just thought of this. How many total student athletes do you think you've had a chance to coach in your long career? Hundreds, thousands?
100. Well, at one time, because I taught a lot of health and we rotated kids through from phys ed, I know I've had over 15,000 students.
Isn't that crazy? Students, 15,000.
Students and athletes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered this, right? So I've coached, right? Hopefully, maybe again someday. Todd's still, active in coaching his jiu-jitsu and giving back to the community. That first day, let's talk about Monroe. I know you had some other stops. First day, track, cross country, you're walking down to practice for the very first time. What are you thinking as a young coach?
Well, I started off with cross country in the fall of '79, and I had coached those kids as junior high athletes.
Okay.
So I knew I had a pretty good crew coming in. And when I told them that I thought they had a good chance of going to the state meet.
This is that first year.
This is first year. They laughed at me. They thought I was a joke.
Who's this guy?
And part of the reason was I had one kid that summer ran 100 miles. Nobody else had any substantial running whatsoever. And that fall, we were 13th at the regionals.
No kidding.
We were really dynamite.
Yeah. What year was that?
79? 79.
So we knew we had to make some changes.
Right.
We knew some things had to happen.
Yeah.
And it took a while to get there.
And that vision, though, and I talk about vision of a program, like when people say, oh, well, that school's always been great, or that school's... When you came in 1979 and you had that vision to take Monroe cross country and Monroe track and field, how does a coach go about that? Because there's certain programs in this county that they want to do well, but they just always point to another school, like, well, that school is going to be the best.
Right.
And it's funny because I did get that comment from some people. Boy, you're lucky to be down Monroe where they got all that talent.
Right.
And I love them to believe that, because we did have a different mindset. When I took over cross country, there had only been 3 winning seasons in the previous 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Track had been going pretty good. Track had a lot of winning records, but cross country did not. So it took a while. It took actually 5 years for the cross country thing to turn around. And I started to fall on some people for some information. And I was going to tell, if any coaches listening, don't ask the people in your league. They won't help you. They don't want you to beat their butts.
Yeah. All right.
And you don't even ask the people who end up in the regionals with you.
Yeah.
But what coaches need to do, in the state of Michigan, we have a cross country and a track clinic every year. You go and learn. I go to clinics in Ohio, clinics in Illinois, clinics in Indiana, and you start talking to people. I've always given the most credit to my career goes to a guy named Barney Roy, who coached track and cross country in Marshall, Michigan. They had a good program. Class B, he only had to see me once a year at the Hillsdale Invitational. We sat down for 2 hours. He said, I'll talk to you, but if you don't do this stuff, I'm going to kick you in the fanny.
Yeah.
So
he probably didn't use fanny. He didn't use that word.
2 things that have to be done. You got to get your kids to cross country camp, and you got to have your kids run in the off season. 5 years later, I'm Michigan Coach of the Year. And at the banquet, he comes up to me and says, Dave, I deserve about, maybe 15% of that trophy.
Yeah.
I said, Barney, you deserve about 85% of that trophy, because
I love it.
We put it into action with our school, our personality, and it's working.
Yeah. I love that. Todd and I talked about it last time. Todd just got back from a trip out to New York again to better himself, right, and to learn from others. And I had a chance last month up at Mount Pleasant to speak to baseball coaches. But I just remember as a young coach going there and just taking all of those pieces of information. And actually during my speech, I mentioned, as much information as that's out there and you want to take, you have to be cautious too of what fits your philosophy. You can't just take stuff to take stuff.
That's right.
You've got to take stuff that fits what you believe. And here it is. I mean, you're going to work in the off season, right? And we're going to get camp going, right? And here you are 5 years later, you're starting to get the kids, get the results. This guy ends up in your lap a few years after that, and you're off and rolling. So 79, you doing the boys and girls or just boys?
We didn't have a girls team then.
Not okay.
Started it 2 years later.
Okay.
81.
I was going to say one thing too about the clinics. One thing I was having trouble with, we would have a 500, 750,000 mile club, and the boys would do it. I'd get 7, 8, 9 boys a year who'd go 500 miles. I'd maybe get one girl. So I'm talking to Rich Tompkins from Fremont, who's got a really good Class B program. And I said, Rich, my girls won't run 500 miles. What can I do? He says, real simple, Dave. Kilometers. That's the magic word.
Okay.
So the girls, if they would run 500 kilometers, which is about 311 miles, they'll improve. And I said, won't the boys kind of get mad because the girls are getting an award for running? He said, when they see the success, they won't care.
Right.
Okay.
They'll be happy.
I didn't know that.
The next 2 years, we were third in the state, fifth in the state.
Wow.
For the girls. I'd get 7, 8 girls would run 500 kilometers. Yeah.
So when I was running, that was 500.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was 500 kilometers.
Yeah.
When I was running. So it was, or was it miles?
It's still miles.
Yeah,
See,
because we had the 500 mile club, the 750, and the 1,000. I don't even think you had the 250 when I was there.
Not a 250.
It was 500 because it was that gray shirt. Because I remember
you had different shirts, didn't you?
Shirt for
Yeah,
it.
I never earned the shirt.
And if you went up a notch,
I didn't earn the shirt. Should have
worked hard.
I should have gone to camp. I didn't go to camp.
If you went up a notch, then you got the shirt and a medal, and there was something extra for every.
I just remember running, thinking that shirt. I wanted to get that shirt, and then the 750, the 1,000. I think he just made up a shirt. I got 2 500 mile shirts or something. Was I the first one?
Is there?
I don't know.
Was there an actual 1,000-mile shirt?
Added like a medal for
that's
750, right. And then something else when you got to 1,000. Mm-hmm. I haven't coached for 25 years, so I can't remember it.
But what he's saying is like with the mile clubs and the camps, he had the kids believed like success, right? So they're like, man, if I do that, then we're going to be top 10. If I do that, we have a chance to be top 5. If I do that, my time's going to go under 10 minutes for the 2 mile or under 4:40 or for maybe under 6 minutes. And that was the great thing I loved about Coach Bork is he just didn't treat the top runners, like preferential treatment. Every runner was important. Yeah. So, you would notice that 8th girl sprinting across the line to try to get that next place. You would pushing that next, runner on the team. And I think that's important as well as a coach. And that's what he showed me. Treat everybody with respect, teach them all together, and they're all gonna work for each other.
And 2 things along that line, we made it to get a varsity letter. It wasn't necessarily that you had to beat someone on our team. If you beat the 5th person from the other team, you got a point. So if you were our 9th kid and beat the 5th kid from the other school, you got a varsity point.
Really?
So we got a lot of varsity. Yeah. Why should a kid be punished because they're running for Monroe High?
And that goes back to what we were talking about, the banquets.
I didn't know that. I would have stuck with
and
it.
how he used to put things together.
The booklet.
Can you imagine trying to keep together every runner that beat the 5th runner of the other team? That's
how'd you do it? Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, and we said this last time, right, on our little pilot show. I mean, coaching is so much more. To do it right, and to do it effectively is so much more than just that 3 to 5 time slot. And coach is a great example. And Todd and I have spoken about this for many, many years. That it was your life, it was your family's life, your kids, your wife. I mean, my aunt. I mean, it was a true family event. And I'm sure after practice, I go home, do my thing, you go home, do your thing. I'm sure you're sitting at the kitchen table, matching up times, getting in your record books. Great. I mean, here's what the 5th kid has to run to beat the other team. I mean, it never ends for him. And then you're right, at the end of the year, that booklet, I don't know how, by the time you got done coaching, that booklet had to be this thick. And I still have mine. It was a phone. And now I ran 1 year.
Yeah, but it was awesome to look through there because he kept every split, every race, every dual meet. Back then we had 16 races a year, I believe, because we had dual meets, dual meet, invitational. So you had all those splits. And then for me, it was great because from 10th grade to 11th, I would try to improve on everything that he showed, what I accomplished the year before. And then my senior year, I just kept going back I got to beat that split. I have to beat that split. And maybe he didn't even know that, but that's how important it was for me. It seems like yesterday, even though it was almost 40 years ago, how that drove me, those top 10 times and those lists to get better and better, to get me to that next step.
I remember running, and so 2 reasons I ran. One, right, coach is my neighbor and my uncle, so I feel like I had to run. And 2, at the end of the race, we got the cans of Sprite.
We got a can of pop.
You got a can of pop at the end. I mean, you run 3.1, you get a can of pop at the end. That was enough for me.
At the red and white van.
At the red and white van. And we ran my freshman year, we were out at Custer.
That's right.
And then did it move after that?
Well, we were out there for about 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you run out to Custer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was how many night was it? The turns. There were 20.
Something like 24 turns.
24 turns.
I don't remember
Those
that.
were almost like hills then.
Back then, though, what was great, I don't know if the population of Monroe was smaller. We just did it anyway. But we would do a lot of, from the high school, we would run out there. We'd run to Custer. That was a warm-up. At least I can remember that.
Yeah, that was me. I drove.
Yeah. Because
Most of them drove.
yeah. So then we had the Kmart 8-miler. We had the visitation. That was through the visitation.
6-miler.
The Riverside 4-miler, because if you stopped at the sign, that was 4.
Man.
And then the 6-miler, I believe, was General Custer's 6-miler, because that was to the.
Okay.
Yes, that's how I remember.
I just remember Coach following along in the van.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And he would be at the mile marks. And,
Oh, yeah, that I remember.
And then if people would walk or they'd try
I
to
walked.
hitchhike.
I didn't do that. I walked.
I think we had a couple hitchhikers, but when we would do that, when some of the guys would run, when we had the fairgrounds or the Dunbar runs. Yeah, I won't name names, but I think there were some people that
I
were
was going to
walking.
get back to talking about treating everybody alike.
Yeah.
You never know who's going to develop. A lot of kids in junior high, decent but not super, and come along later on. I can remember the one story I always like to tell is Sean Sweat.
Yeah.
When he was a freshman, he could not break 20 for the cross-country course. As a senior, he was 7th in the state.
Wow.
He improved that
Yeah.
much. You just never know when that's going to happen.
And he went off to college and run after.
He ran at
Yeah.
University of Michigan.
That's
Yeah,
right.
not all bad for a kid that couldn't break 20.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting close to the end of here, episode number 1, Coach's Corner. So I have a question.
I've got another question. We got no time, but let's go overtime. We're just getting more sponsors. We're just going with the longer show.
I could be here all night and talk to Coach Bork.
I know it. That's why we brought him on.
I kind of put him on a spot. Doesn't have to answer because you might hurt somebody's feelings. But if you had to pick the top 5 boys and girls, if you had to put a dream team together of the top 5 boys, the top 5 girls.
It's not even a fair question.
Well, you're not going to be on there anyway.
I know it.
You might be an alternate.
Okay.
You might be serving the Sprite.
All right. I want to hear this anyway, though, because I know most of these kids.
It's a good
Timing
question.
you into 2 miles.
Yeah, that's true, right there. And we'll show that picture later. That would have been Scott. But I think it's a great question.
I like this. I've done this with my baseball team at home.
When we go out once in a while, who's the best athlete out of Monroe? So I was just thinking this morning driving over, if you had to pick a top 5 for cross country, boys and girls that you coached, who would be your top 5?
And then, whoever doesn't, we'll put them on the alternate list. So yeah, if you could rattle off some names. Woo. Top 5. I know, no pressure.
Well,
and you just had a birthday. Good thing.
Obviously, Todd is gifted, but he also was the hardest worker I ever had.
I agree.
No question.
That's why he asked the question, by the way.
And he had the good success.
I'm glad I'm number
I
one.
was going to say, who's your favorite nephew? Is that the next question?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm going to be co-ed, though, too.
Yeah.
I had Kelly Burt was a great runner.
Yeah.
She was my first girl cross-country team. She was in second place with about 100 yards to go, and she hyperventilated, ended up 16th. She ended up the captain of Michigan's track and cross-country team.
Wow. There you go.
Very, very fine athlete. Didn't get to run her senior year in track because she was running in the winter and got hurt.
So that's 1 and 1. So you got
There's
myself.
1 and 1.
Okay.
Rachel Smith was a really good girl runner. She was, matter of fact, she came into the stadium at MIS in second place, and she kind of petered out a little bit at the end. She ended up about 7th or 9th, so she was a very good runner. Obviously, boys, you got to throw Tim Pitcher in there.
Yep.
Tim Pitcher might have had more ability than you. I don't know if he worked as hard as you did. Matter of fact, if he wouldn't been around a bunch of guys that worked real hard, I don't know how hard he would have worked.
There you go. Okay.
He was driven because he wanted to be number 1. He always worked hard enough to be number 1. He was
very competitive. Like
Very
when he came to
competitive.
University of Tennessee, he won the SEC title. He was an All-American. I mean, Tim did not like to lose, and
No,
and
not
I
at
think
all.
that's what That's what
And he,
pushed him.
you know, he was a 150 half miler, second fastest time in the state of Michigan when he ran the half.
Wow.
He was state champ in the 1600, so he's got to be up in there.
Yep.
It's hard to leave out that the whole team that I had in '88.
Great team.
Yeah.
Mercy be. I had Schroeder was on that team, a very fine runner. He ran at Michigan. Phil Sanborn won 2 races that year, a dual meet against Wyandotte, and he was state champion.
That's right.
That crazy?
That's right. He did win state.
Pitcher stumbled with another guy, and he was able to go on and win. My own son Derek he was one of the hardest workers we ever had. He went on to run at Stanford, and he was 3rd in the mile his senior year in the state. So he was good. But that whole team of pitcher, Sanborn, Schroeder, Sweat, and Bork at that time was the best cross-country team that Michigan had ever seen.
Crazy.
So you got to
Right here, Monroe County.
Yeah.
Come on.
We went 1, 2, 6, 7, 23, 24 in the state meet with 300 runners.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, and then, you know, tying it back to you starting in 79, right? That was the first
Boys.
year. 10 years later, off that one team, I believe there was 6 runners that went on to Division I. Correct? I think it was. So think about it, in a 10-year period how he changed the landscape.
Some schools won't get any.
Right.
Any.
Yeah.
Ever. So, and that's what I think about when somebody says, "Hey, how can a coach change a program?" This is an example. 1979 to 1989, they go from not being in the top 15, not top 20, to now you're having the best team in the history of the state with 6 Division I cross country runners going off to running college. That's a great example of yes, you can do it. Don't say you can't do it.
Right.
It can be done.
Yeah.
And we did happen to go 14 years in a row. We were in the top 9 in the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
And with
And 110 straight dual.
I was just going to ask about that record. I knew I was on some of
11
those.
years in a row.
I ran
We
on
did
some of
not-
those teams.
We did not lose a meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
How many? Say that again. How many
11
years?
years in a row.
That's
we
crazy.
Did not
Yeah.
lose a meet.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For 11 years to never
That
go
was
home
the
a loser.
what was that streak? What was
110?
110.
110.
110.
110 in a row.
And the year before we were 8-1, and the year after we were 9-1.
Yeah, I'm familiar with one of those streaks, Coach. Don't get me started. Unbelievable. All right, so we have time? Real quick, I got to ask you about this. Because, Todd asked questions about himself. I got to ask you a question. So you mentioned MIS. For the good folks out there, tell us how MIS got started, because I think I had a little bit to do with
You
this.
got a lot to do with
See,
it.
talk about this. We're going to feature
honk.
this a little bit.
Honk.
You and your brother.
Fair enough.
And especially since you'd run cross country, and you kind of knew what a cross country course looked like.
Sort of.
I said, could MIS, because you guys, for the baseball team at Spring Arbor, you did concessions
That's right.
out there. So you knew the facility. So I said, is there any chance that could be made into a cross country course? And you said, I think so, because the inside is nifty, and outside there's a Formula One track running through woods, up and down, and there's a pond back there, and the rest is history. We've been there 27 years.
And that's
at
because of
MIS.
you?
Well, I'm just going to say this: if it wasn't for me and MIS, this guy doesn't have the kind of career he does. I'm just going to say, if there's no MIS, there's no you at MIS.
He never ran
I never
there.
ran it in my
Well, that's my point.
Okay.
There we go. That
There you
was,
go.
yeah.
There you
Never
go.
ran there.
Yeah. So where was the state meet at?
IMA Brookwood Golf Course in Flint was 2 years that I ran it. At Flint.
Yeah, it would've
my
been long.
sophomore year. Not for sure where it was in fall of '84.
So what was the first year at MIS?
First year of MIS
was long after you then.
was 96.
Oh,
96.
was the first year.
You're like in the
You would
Olympics.
have run that year. We're up somewhere in Bloomfield Hills area or something.
my
like
sophomore
that.
year.
Yeah.
And then it went to IMA
Yeah.
Brookwood in
I can
Flint.
remember in my brain what the course looked like,
Yeah.
but I can't remember the name of it. We would go every 2 years to a different site.
Yeah.
Once we got it at MIS, all classes are there, and we can run the team and individuals together, so we know who the best kids in the state are.
See, we can ask questions.
I know
So
it's
my
never
bu-
going to. Go ahead, because
Listen.
we got to wrap it up.
Okay, the single best track and field performance, not just at Monroe, that you ever witnessed as a high school coach. Doesn't have to be a Monroe runner, even though.
It's probably Todd.
No, I'm just kidding. But there's got it. But like, think about all the performances when you were coaching, from state meets to going places to watch. The number one high school performance that you ever witnessed.
Hayes Jones, winning the high school state 120-yard high hurdles when my brother was in high school.
Wow, that sticks out.
1956, 57.
Wow,
That crazy?
I saw Hayes Jones. He won by a full hurdle.
wow,
He was that far ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
wow.
That was, to me, I think,
The
one
greatest single event.
of the greatest single event I ever
I thought you were
saw.
going to say the 9 flat I ran in a dual meet.
I told you it was a setup question. It's a
You
setup
ran that-
question.
You ran that at the state
Coach's
meet.
No, the
corner.
dual meet.
No, you didn't.
Against, I thought it was against Wyandotte, the dual meet, 901 in the dual meet.
No, you ran that at the state meet your senior year.
I know it was.
Elma High School.
So the dual meet against, I think it was Wyandotte, when Henry was at the corner, I ran it. The dual meet was it was 901. And then I ran 9 flat .4 at the state meet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was pretty neat. I mean, Anthony Ham, if I'm not mistaken, was about 35 yards.
That was a tough day. Yeah.
You wanted me to tell him about the mile that day?
No.
So here's what I do want you to say, Coach, because we've got to wrap up here. So advice, we're going to wrap up with this, right? Coach's Corner. Advice for young coaches getting into, what advice would you leave them? Somebody that's just now getting into their sport as a head coach.
Well, you've got to constantly learn your craft. And that's why I said before, get yourself to clinics, talk to coaches who are successful, read books, watch the sport. And the other thing is, you don't win the Kentucky Derby riding a burro. You have to get kids out for the sport. It's for their betterment. So you got to find ways to recruit kids so that you have 100 kids coming out for track. So you have 35 kids coming out for cross country. And I had a bunch of different ways of getting people out. But pros get to draft. Colleges get to go and recruit. I have to deal with what's in the building. Mm-hmm. So I have
That's
to
true.
find those
Good
kids. I
point.
have to get the junior high coaches to help me. I got to talk to the elementary phys ed teachers and find out who the kids are who have some kind of ability. And then you've got to find a way to get them out. And I had kind of tricks to do that too.
Hall of Fame coach Dave Bork here on our very first edition of Coach's Corner. We'll be right back, folks. We're going to bring in guests all the time.
Yes.
But I tell you what, it starts and then right here with one of my favorites.
I was blessed to have Coach Bork. So every time I see him, I say thank you because I was just lucky to have a coach like Coach Bork.
Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Thank you. Well,
Happy
thank you for
birthday.
having me. I hope I can help somebody.